The blinds cut the morning sun into neat white bars that fell across the mahogany table. A ceiling vent hummed. Somewhere in the hallway, a crash cart squeaked, paused, squeaked again. Inside the conference room at Brooke Army Medical Center, 5 people studied a single page that did not want to give them anything. 2 years, Dr. Victor Klein said, voice cool and exact. No publications, no verifiable references, and I am meant to believe you were doing humanitarian work. Rowan Hale stood at the far end of the table, hands clasped behind her back, chin level. Navy scrub spotless, hair pulled tight at the nape. A temporary badge clipped at the collar read contractor in red. When she breathed in the air conditioner, carried a trace of burned coffee. Conflict zones, she said. Some organizations do not list names. Which organizations? I signed non-disclosure. Klein's gray hair caught the light. His white coat sat on him like armor seams pressed flat thread unfrayed. He angled his reading glasses down as if a different perspective might reveal new lines on the resume. That is convenient. At the table, a senior resident named Maya Patel watched without blinking. She had been in enough rooms like this to recognize the geometry of power the way you got measured before you got cut. Her gaze caught on the edge of ink where Rowan's right sleeve rode up. Numbers. 35 DG 57, in 39 DG 01, E. The skin there looked sun-etched, healed over a long time ago. Another committee member cleared his throat. Dr. Hale, your education is unimpeachable. Hopkins top decile. Residency at Brigham honors. The gap is the issue. Continuity. I maintain my skills, Rowan said. Complex trauma, no supervision. Klein's eyes lifted. That is not how we do medicine here. I understand your concern. Do you? From the hallway came a call-light soft chime. The room did not move. Maya studied Rowan's posture. The weight on the balls of the feet, not the heels. The way her eyes slid briefly to the door handle, then to the corner where the crash cart would be if someone had to wheel it in fast. Not defensive, not rattled. Pattern recognition of a different kind. We are short, staffed a third committee member, said the one with the neat pen and the patient smile. Dr. Klein, we could implement a probationary period. Klein rested the glasses on the file. He let silence lengthen until it bit. 90 days, routine cases only, appendectomies, hernias, gallbladders. You will be supervised at every step. He gestured at Rowan's sleeve at the strip of ink. And cover that. This is a hospital, not a mall. Rowan glanced down at her forearm. The numbers were clean and black the way they had been the day the needle stopped. 35D and 39D 1 E, Raqqa. A city pinned under sun and dust. Children with pinpoint pupils. The smell of chlorine in water that was not water. Understood, she said. The meeting dissolved in papers sliding into folders and chairs scraping tile. People rose, shook hands that did not add warmth, and filed out. Maya lingered at the doorframe. Those coordinates, she said. They point to Syria. Rowan's eyes met hers. Amber steady. They point to where I learned to keep going. Maya held the look a second longer, then nodded once. No more questions. Not here. In the resident lounge, the coffee machine coughed out something dark and bitter. A second year named Josh Kim filled a styrofoam cup with a grimace. So the contractor, he said. 2-year void shows up like she never left. Chloe Grant leaned on the counter, arms folded. NDA, conflict zones, that old song. Could be suspended, could be rehab. Or, Maya said without looking up from her tablet, it could be none of our business. Josh smirked. You do not vanish from medicine for 2 years and pop back in clean. Maya slid a chart away and thought about the way Rowan had stood perfectly still while the room tried to shake her. Not a statue's stillness. A shooter's. She tamped down the thought before it showed on her face. Do not call it vanishing, she said. Some people work where the cameras do not go. The door opened. Rowan stepped in, moved to a locker without scanning the room. No greeting beyond a quiet morning. She tied her hair back with 3 quick motions, put on a scrub cap, checked her watch. The fluorescent lights turned the metal bins a cold white. She was gone before the coffee machine finished exhaling steam. Josh watched the door swing shut, weird. What was weird, Maya said. The way she moved, like a bass, like faux hallways. You have never been on a fob. Movies exist. Maya closed her tablet. You think watching a movie teaches you a gait. He opened his mouth, then closed it. His cup steamed between his fingers. Down the corridor, the surgical staff changing room smelled like antiseptic and old detergent. Locker 147 had a dent near the bottom where a boot had kicked it years ago. Rowan spun the dial, lifted the handle, and found a fresh pair of gloves and a folded blue cap someone had placed there for the next person. She took them. The board on the wall read, Or 30900 inguinal hernia repair, D2 Morales 46, no complications. She let herself smile for less than a second. In the scrub area, stainless steel sinks shone under harsh light. Water came warm, then too hot, then perfect. Rowan's fingers moved with the muscle memory of hundreds of mornings that began and ended under lights. Nails, fingers, palms, wrists, forearms, 10 strokes each, and then again. The antiseptic smell moved into her sinuses and hung there. She counted the strokes in her head, then stopped counting and listened to the sound her hands made rubbing against each other. It sounded like rain on nylon. She looked through the glass at OR3. The anesthesiologist, Dr. Ramon Gutierrez, checked tubing. The scrub nurse, Linda Park, laid out instruments in a perfect fan. Retractors gleamed, suture packs sat in neat squares. It was a room designed to make chaos behave. The OR doors parted and Klein walked in. He was not scheduled to supervise. He took the station at the wall anyway, arms crossed just like in the conference room. Rowan dried her hands with care back through the doors so she did not touch anything not meant to be touched. Let Linda glove her. The elastic snapped around her wrist. Her breathing slowed. Dr. Hale Klein said without angle in his voice, Textbook procedure. I trust the basics have stayed with you. Yes, proceed. Rowan stepped to the table. Drapes in place. The surgical site marked and prepped. The patient lay anonymous under blue. Linda placed a scalpel in Rowan's palm. The handle had a small nick near the base, the kind you only feel when your hand knows the weight of the tool. The first cut was smooth. No chatter, no hesitation. Layers opened clean. The lights hummed. The suction made a low animal sound. Rowan worked down, exposed the hernia sac, retracted, found the plane she wanted. Pressure, space, patience. She paused. The exposed loop of bowel sat in the field, and the color was wrong by a shade you only learn after the wrong shade has made you pay for not seeing it. Not gray, not dead, a dusky lavender in uneven patches. Dr. Klein, she said, look at this. He stepped closer, within range for tension. It is not the hernia. Pattern is distal, arterial. Pre-op scans were clean, vitals are steady. Scans miss small emboli, superior mesenteric distribution. Linda glanced up one, then down again at the tray. She stood ready. Maya had slipped into the gallery, above breath, fogging the glass for an instant before she wiped it with her sleeve. Doppler, Rowan said. Klein did not move for a count of 3. Then he nodded at Linda. The machine came in on a rolling stand. Gel cold. Probe careful. The screen flickered. Waveforms formed and then steadied. Reduced flow, Rowan said. About 50%, partial thrombus. Klein went pale, then recovered his color so quickly it could have been a trick of the light. He did not ask how she had seen it. Not with his mouth. His eyes asked anyway. Extend the incision, he said. I will assist. Rowan did not look away from the field. Larger retractors. Vascular clamps available. Fogarty size 3. Linda was already moving. The room changed shape. New goals, new tools. Rowan opened, slid deeper, exposed the vessel with respect and certainty. The artery throbbed under her touch. She made a small arteriotomy, threaded the Fogarty, and advanced it until resistance spoke up. Balloon, saline, withdraw. A dark cylinder of clot appeared like a secret given up. Blood brightened. The bowel pinked near the edges first, then through the middle. You learn that color the way a pilot learns the sound of an engine that will keep you in the air. Flow restored, Dr. Gutierrez said from the head of the table. Rowan closed the vessel with tiny bites, equal tension, equal spacing. No wasted motion. She turned back to the original repair and finished it fast, not rushed. The last subcuticular stitch sat flat and neat. Klein checked his watch. 53 minutes, he said. Rowan stripped gloves, dropped them in the bin, and thought about the way his tone had lowered by a fraction halfway through the case. Linda smiled with her eyes the only part of her face visible. In the corridor outside, the air felt warmer. Walt Booker rolled a stocked cart past the OR and stopped when he saw Rowan's profile through the window. He had been a combat medic for 20 years and then a nurse for 20 more. He recognized the way she had held the instrument before she even touched the patient. He did not say anything. Recognition did not require words. Rowan reached the changing room again. The hum of the building felt closer to her skin. She touched her sleeve, pressed the fabric down over the numbers she knew by heart. Overhead, the speakers crackled. A dispatcher's voice came through the static. Air evac inbound from Camp Bullis. Multiple trainees, ETA early afternoon. Rowan closed her locker. The metal door clicked. The sound was light and final for something so thin. She stood still until the click stopped echoing, then picked up her chart and walked toward the board without looking back. By early afternoon, the Texas light had turned hard. Heat trembled above the helipad. The rotor wash hammered the roof and sent dust skateboarding along the skylights. In the trauma bay, the lights were already up and the curtains clipped back. Carts stood in ordered rows. Gauze chest tube trays, airway kits. The air smelled like betadine and jet fuel. Rowan tied a gown behind her neck and snapped on gloves. Walt Booker rolled past with a stack of warm blankets and an expression that said the room was about to tilt. Maya Patel scrubbed at a sink until her knuckles shone, then dried and gloved with clean economy. Josh Kim bounced on the balls of his feet and tried not to look like he was bouncing. Chloe Grant checked suction lines twice. The monitors woke one by one, blue screens turning into green waveforms. Overhead speakers crackled. A voice came through the static with a helicopter behind it. Medevac 7, inbound from Camp Bullis. 5 casualties, 2 critical, 3 stable. First critical is Captain Mason Ortiz, male, 29 single, GSW left, anterior thorax, 4th intercostal space near the sternum, no exit wound, BP 70/40 and dropping, heart rate 140, saturations 8.8, suspected hemothorax, possible cardiac involvement. Klein stepped in front of the whiteboard. He held a marker like a scalpel. He wrote numbers and people under bays while he talked. Patel Bay 3, right lower extremity stable. Kim Bay 4, shoulder through and through. Grant with Patel. Gutierrez on airway backup. I have Ortiz in 1. He turned as if he had forgotten something and looked at Rowan for a long beat. Hale Bay 5, thigh wound, keep it simple. Understood, Rowan said. The doors blew open on a gust of hot and rotor. The first gurney came in fast, pushed by medics in flight helmets. The patient on it was pale under an oxygen mask. Left chest wrapped in a field dressing blotched dark. The gurney cleared the door and the medics angled toward Bay 1, where Klein and a team waited with sterile drapes lifted and ready. 2 more gurneys followed, then a 4th with a young man cursing between clenched teeth, shins soaked in blood. A 5th rolled in with a woman who kept apologizing for bleeding on everything. Rowan's patient hit Bay 5. A lance corporal in his early 20s, face gray eyes bright with the kind of alertness only fear gives. His left thigh was swollen around 2 neat holes. Blood had pooled under him and then stopped pooling. Name, Rowan said. Calhoun, he said. And Ethan, ma'am, I'm fine. It burns a little. It is going to burn more, Rowan said. You will be fine later. She cut away fabric and saw what she needed to know. Through and through. No hard signs of vascular injury. Pulse at the ankle was present and strong. She pressed with 2 fingers and watched the skin pink back. She ordered analgesia and antibiotics without raising her voice and handed gauze to Chloe, who appeared at her shoulder like a shadow. Across the room, Ortiz's monitor sang a fast, bright tone. Dr. Gutierrez eyed the airway while a nurse hung fluids. Klein cut away the rest of the chest wrap. There was a small entry wound near the 4th intercostal space, 2 finger widths left of the sternum. The skin around it looked clean and wrong. The veins at his neck stood like ropes. Rowan irrigated Calhoun's wound. The water came out pink and then clearer. Her hands worked. Her eyes moved. She watched Ortiz across the aisle between movements in her own bay. The little she could hear from the other side came as fragments over the hum. Chest tube tray, Klein said. Right here, someone answered. 2 fingers above the 5th, incision, blunt dissect. A different rhythm took hold in Bay 1. Metal tools clicked. Suction began to sing. When the tube went in the line filled with dark blood and kept filling. A liter out. Then more. Ortiz moaned and tried to lift his head. Hands kept him still. Rowan dried her gloves and leaned into Calhoun's wound. She palpated the track lightly and liked what she felt. No foreign body she could catch with her fingers. No hard edges. She packed the exit with hemostatic gauze and looked up again. The tube on Ortiz kept draining. The monitor numbers did not climb. His neck veins were still up like cables. Dr. Klein, Rowan said across the space without raising her voice. Jugular distension with hypotension, Beck triad. Not now, Hale, Klein said. I have it. He did not look at her. He watched the tube and the numbers and the color under his hands. He had a stethoscope in his ears and rhythm under his fingers. He placed another line and called for blood. He told someone to type and cross and someone else to get ultrasound. His voice stayed even. Ortiz started to cough around the mask and then stopped coughing. Calhoun flinched as Chloe tightened a pressure dressing. I am okay, he said. Tell my sergeant I did not cry. You did not cry, Chloe said, and the tape made a small tearing sound that seemed too loud. Rowan covered the entry wound with a bandage that would hold under panic. She checked distal pulse again. Present. Good. She looked over and saw Walt move toward the supply cabinet, open a drawer she had not seen anyone open all month, and lay out a sterile pack on a rolling stand that he did not push anywhere. He set rib spreaders on the bottom shelf and covered them with a towel. He did not look at her when he did it. Portable ultrasound, someone said in Bay 1. On, another voice said. Probe placement. Klein turned the screen toward him. Green waveforms stuttered into life. The room noise thinned as if it were obeying a hand signal. Pericardial view, Klein said. Poor windows, someone answered. Air blood. Rowan heard none of the specifics after that, only the shape of trouble in the rise and fall of voices. Ortiz's monitor changed its sound. The heart rate chased its own tail. The waveform spiked high and dropped. His pressure numbers fell like someone had cut their strings. Charged to 200, Klein said. Charged. Clear. The body on the table jerked. The line went back to chaos for a breath, then flattened into a long, steady complaint. Again, Klein said. 200. Clear. The same. A flicker. Then a line so clean it hurt to see. Compressions, Klein said. A resident climbed onto a step and began to push on the chest with both arms locked. The sound in the room shifted from machines to the human rhythm of someone working very hard. Sweat ran from under the resident's cap and hung on the edge of her jaw. A nurse called out times in a voice that faintly shook before she made it not shake. 1 minute down, epinephrine in. Rowan stood at the foot of Calhoun's bed and watched his chest rise with the bag. He watched her watch the other bay and tried not to. He said, Is he going to be okay? Well, go away to and came within a hair of making it a question that wanted the truth. We are not his team, Rowan said. We take care of you. She heard her own voice. It was flat and level in a way that made Calhoun relax his shoulders without noticing. 2 minutes, the nurse called. Maya tore her eyes from the glass where she had been watching and ducked back into Bay 3. She looked at her patient's leg and saw it as if for the first time. She was breathing too fast. She made herself slow it until the world shrank back to the size of the wound. In Bay 1, Klein called for more blood. He called for another round of drugs. He glanced at the ultrasound again and saw static where a window should be. He looked at Ortiz's neck. The veins were still up. The suction canister under the bed was half full of old blood. The chest tube had slowed but not stopped. 3 minutes, the nurse said. A medic who had come in with a gurney leaned over Ortiz and spoke into the mask, as if words could anchor a person to a table. Captain, stay with me. Keep your eyes on that light. That light is yours. You are not done. Ortiz's eyes moved under fluttering lids. He turned his head toward Bay 5 in a way no one could have expected, and managed to focus for a second that would not repeat itself. I know her, he said. The mask blurred the words and did not hide them. Say again, the medic said. Her, the doctor, Ortiz said. His chest shuddered under the resident's hands. Dessert, chlorine, she was there. The medic looked toward Bay 5 on reflex. Rowan had turned her body back to her own patient, and when she reached for a syringe, the edge of her sleeve slid and uncovered the black numbers on her forearm. The medic froze for half a second, then set his face back to work. He had seen numbers like that on too many arms to ignore them. 4 minutes, the nurse said. Rhythm check, no pulse. Charge again, Klein said quieter now. 200. Charged. Clear. Nothing. The resident kept compressions going. Someone swapped in. The new set of arms took over without a miss in the beat. The room was full and felt empty. 5 minutes, the nurse said. Walt stood at the edge of the Bay 5 with his hand on the cart shelf. The towel lay over metal that could open a chest. He did not move it. He did not speak. He watched Rowan's face and saw the moment she stopped blinking and started counting her own breath. Push another epi, Klein said. If this does not convert, we are done. He had one palm on the bed rail. He had his jaw tight. He had not looked at the neck vein since the second minute. He did not let himself look now. 5.5, the nurse said. Klein nodded once. He took a breath that belonged to a different room and a different day, and held it until he could let it go without breaking his voice. Time of death, he said, 1451. The word hung in the air as if the air could refuse it. Rowan's hand tightened around the needle driver until the metal pressed a half moon into her glove. She stepped away from Calhoun's bed. She did not look at Walt or the cart or the towel that did not hide anything from her. She walked toward Bay 1 and spoke in a tone that did not invite reply. "No," she said. "He is not done." Klein turned toward Rowan as if pulled by a wire. For a second he did not speak. The room breathed around him and did not wait. Walt pulled the towel from the cart and rolled it to Bay 1. Instruments flashed dull under the lights. Rib spreaders, pericardial scissors, a small stack of vascular clamps that looked too delicate for what they did. A bottle of betadine rattled in its wire basket. Rowan took the bottle and poured. Brown ran over pale skin and pink tape and pooled in the hollow where a rib met cartilage. She did not wait for the neat circle of sterile prep. She held out her hand and Walt put a scalpel in it. Number 10 blade. She felt the weight at the base of her fingers and did not think. Incision from the edge of the breastbone toward the mid-axillary line. 5th space. She felt for the intercostal groove with a fingertip and stayed above it. The skin parted. The subcutaneous layer opened with a soft pull. She called for cautery and could smell burned hair and the sweeter thread of seared fat. The sound of the bovie filled her ears until it became part of the same low music as the monitor. She swept muscle from rib with a clamp and a sponge. She cut through intercostal muscle and the pleura gave like wet paper. Air pulled at the wound. The ribs opened under the retractor with a wet pop and then with a slow noise that made someone behind her grit teeth. The left lung fell away from the field. There was a lot of blood. Pericardium, Rowan said. She lifted the white sac with pickups and watched the phrenic nerve run along its border like a delicate string that could not be nicked. The pericardium was tight and discolored. She made a longitudinal cut, and it let go like a clenched hand. Dark blood spilled into the chest and spread warmth through Rowan's gloves. Suction. Chloe leaned in and cleared the pool with a long wand. The heart showed itself. It was still. The right ventricle wore a thin mouth of a wound that opened and closed in a way that was almost a beat and not a beat at all. The edges of the laceration oozed a quiet line of blood. The rhythm strip showed flatness with tiny irritations along it. 7 minutes, the nurse said. Her voice was steady. Rowan slid her left hand under the heart and lifted gently. She felt the shape and the weight. She began manual compressions with her palm on the apex and her fingers along the free wall. Slow and even. She counted inside her head and made the numbers fit the muscles under her hand. Pledge at 30 proline, she said. Walt had loaded a needle with a small white pad that would anchor the suture in fragile muscle. He placed it into her right hand. She did not stop compressions. She put the needle through the ventricular wall at the edge of the cut, took a small bite on the far side, then brought it back. The muscle texture pushed and gave. She tied without looking at anything except the wound. The knot sat down tight. Another pledge it, she said. Klein stood across from her with his hands lifted sterile, his eyes on the heart. He had the face of a man watching a line on a map shift under his feet. He did not speak. He held a retractor where she indicated and kept pressure out of her way. The second stitch closed the middle of the cut. The third secured the far edge. Rowan checked the field. No arterial splash, no whisper of a leak. She kept compressions going for another count of 30. The heart twitched against her palm as if remembering. Internal paddles, she said. Walt placed the paddles in her hands and turned his face away a fraction. Dr. Gutierrez called out that everyone was clear. The smell of gel replaced blood for a moment. 20 joules, Rowan said. She placed the paddles on either side of the heart and triggered. The muscle quivered, lifted once, then sagged in her hand. 30, she said. She shocked again. A flutter, a hiccup, a stutter. She resumed the compressions. The monitor grumbled, then lined out again. 8 minutes, the nurse said. Rowan worked. She did not raise her voice or lower it. Sweat ran down between her shoulder blades under the gown and cooled in the air that came from vents in the ceiling. The suction caught another pool of dark blood and sent it humming down a tube. Chloe wiped Rowan's forehead with a sleeve without touching her mask. Dr. Hale Klein said. His voice had no angle. Rowan did not answer. Her left hand kept the beat. Her right hand did what it had to when a knot needed flattening or a plane needed clearing. She focused the world down to the space bounded by her fingers and the edges of exposed muscle. "Come on," she said to the heart in a tone a person could answer. "Come on." The strip clicked. A small spike appeared. then another. It marched without confidence for 3 beats, wandered for 2, then returned with intent. The heart lifted under her palm. It pushed blood into her hand and away. It found its own rhythm and took hers with it. "We have organized activity," Dr. Gutierrez said. "Rate 60, pressure rising, 70/40, 80/50. Rowan removed her hand slowly and watched for bleeding. The suture line held. The oozing stopped. The right ventricle looked ugly and right. 9 minutes, the nurse said. "Return of spontaneous circulation at 9 minutes. The room let out a breath it had been holding. Someone in the back whispered something that might have been a prayer or a curse. Walt exhaled like a man putting a weight down. "Chest tubes," Rowan said. She placed 2 large drains in the left chest through separate small incisions and directed them to dependent positions. She secured them with heavy suture and watched them fill with what was left to come. Chloe hung new suction bulbs. The fluid ran dark, then lighter. "We are going to need hypothermia protocol, Dr. Tki," Gutierrez said. He was already calling for orders. He was already calculating dosages in his head and not out loud. Rowan irrigated the chest cavity until what came out ran mostly clear. She placed a few more interrupted sutures to secure the edges of pericardium loosely so the heart would not rub on bone. She placed a temporary closure over the thoracotomy that could open again if it had to. She checked the neck veins. They lay flat now, compliant. Klein looked at the monitor and at the chest and at Rowan's face. He opened his mouth and closed it. He moved out of her light and then back into it, then fixed himself at the foot so he would not be in the way of anything. "Transport to ICU," he said. He sounded like he always sounded when he gave orders. The difference was small and absolute. They began to move the lines and the tubes into travel configuration. The resident who had done compressions earlier sat down on a stool and only then noticed her hands shaking. She put them in her lap and watched them until they stopped. Walt taped down a loose length of tubing with a strip so straight it looked measured. Ortiz's eyes did not open. His face looked young in a way it had not looked at intake. He breathed with the ventilator and did not fight it. The skin at his throat had lost the purple rope of distension. Rowan stripped a glove and touched her sleeve back down over the ink, a reflex that had nothing to do with sterility. She peeled off the other glove and dropped both. She stepped back so the team could secure the travel monitor on the rail. Dr. Hale Klein said. She turned. "Who are you?" he said. "Say it." She held his gaze and did not lower it. The room hushed around them as if someone had closed a door. "Colonel Rowan Hale," she said. "United States Army Medical Corps, 6 years attached to Joint Special Operations Command, Syria, Iraq, Northern Border Sectors. 300 trauma cases performed outside conventional operating rooms." Klein absorbed that one, and then the next, and then the total. A muscle in his jaw ticked. He looked at Walt as if to ask if the words were real. Walt nodded once. He had known without needing the words. Klein looked back at Rowan. His eyes were the same color they had been in the conference room, but they did not hold the same thing. "That will do," he said. The transport team arrived with a bed and a sense of speed controlled by knowing what speed could break. They loaded Ortiz with straps that cradled without crushing. Dr. Gutierrez took the head. Chloe took the foot. Walt walked alongside with a hand on the chest tube rack to keep it from swinging. Rowan walked with them to the elevator and then stopped. The doors closed on a reflection of 3 faces and a set of numbers chasing themselves across a small glowing screen. The hall went quiet in their wake. Back in the bay, Calhoun watched Rowan walk in and tried to sit up until the tape told him not to. "He made it," Calhoun said. "He made it to the next place," Rowan said. She checked his dressings and his pulses and the color of his foot. She wrote orders that would keep what needed to be kept and let go of what could be let go. Maya stood at the edge of Bay 5 with her mask pulled to her throat. There was a red line across the bridge of her nose where the mask had pressed. She looked at Rowan and saw the steady after a storm. "Teach me that," Maya said. Rowan glanced at the instruments being cleaned at the blood on the floor at the empty space where a bed had been. "Which part?" she said. "The part where the room said, 'Stop,' and you did not." Maya said, "The part where your hands knew the order before anyone spoke." Rowan folded the pen she had been holding into her pocket. "Start by learning the colors," she said, "then learn the sounds. After that, the order is just the next right thing." Klein stood in the doorway to Bay 1 and listened. He did not move in or out. He was still holding the pair of gloves he had never put on. He let them hang at his side like he had forgotten what they were. He cleared his throat and spoke to Rowan without looking away from the empty bed. "My office after you sign your notes," he said. Rowan nodded. He left. The curtains in Bay 1 stirred in the draft his body made as he passed. Walt mopped a line of dried betadine off the floor with a pad and a bucket of clean water. He hummed something under his breath that might have been a song from a different decade. He did not look up when he spoke. 9 minutes, he said. "That is a long time to dig a person back out." Rowan rinsed her hands at a small sink until the water ran clear from her wrists. The smell of cautery had lodged in her hair and would not leave soon. She dried with a towel and looked at her reflection in the metal of the paper dispenser instead of in the mirror. "He was not buried," she said. "He was under a lid." "We took the lid off." Walt nodded as if that settled a small part of something larger. The trauma base settled back into the sound of beeps and shoes on tile and quiet orders spoken just loud enough. Someone laughed once. Someone cried once, and then stopped. Rowan finished her notes with lines as straight as sutures. When she stepped into the hallway again, the light from the windows had softened from white to something warmer. She could hear the hospital returning to itself around her. She walked toward the stairwell without hurry and without slowing down. Klein's office looked down on the entrance where ambulances eased in like ships. The glass was spotless. The desk was not. He had stacked journals by spine color, straight edges precise. A framed certificate reflected a sliver of light onto the floor. "Sit," he said, then stayed standing. Rowan remained on her feet. The soles of her clogs felt the change from tile to carpet. The room smelled like paper and lemon oil, not betadine. "You saved him," Klein said. "After 9 minutes down." Rowan's hands were clean now. They still remembered the weight of a heart. "He had a lid on it," she said. "We took the lid off." Klein let out a breath. He opened a drawer and closed it again. He looked older for a second, then not. "I can make calls, but I do not need calls to know what I saw. I am offering you a permanent post. Senior trauma full privileges. You will not be a contractor on a short leash." Rowan watched a dust mote drift in a shaft of sun and vanish before it touched the floor. "I have conditions. Name them." "A reintegration program for military physicians. They do not need to be taught how to hold a clamp. They need a bridge." "Done." "Protocols that allow battlefield techniques when the clock dictates. We cut delay where it kills." Klein nodded once. "Agreed. Captain Ortiz, I want eyes on his recovery. You will have them." Rowan looked at the window at the wide concrete curve where a new ambulance was backing up. "Then, yes." He held out his hand. She shook it. His grip was dry and cool. He did not flinch when he felt the strength in hers. "Why did you not tell me who you were?" he asked. "Badges do not hold arteries," she said. "Hands do." 3 months later, the unit had a name on a frosted glass door: Hale Civilian Combat Trauma Integration Unit. The letters looked too polite for what went on inside. The sim lab ran under dimmed lights that hummed. A speaker cracked and popped and then poured in noise you could not control. Sirens in the distance. A child crying behind a wall. A pump that failed on cue. Monitors lied and then told the truth and then lied again. The mannequins bled harder than mannequins had any right to bleed. When someone reached for tools, sometimes the tray had what they wanted, and sometimes it did not. Patel moved through the room with a clipboard and a quiet voice that carved space. "Your light is wrong," she told a resident. "Move it. See the color." She set a pair of hands on a chest and corrected the angle. "Your pressure is frantic. Make it useful." Rowan stood behind glass and watched breathing change. Watch a jaw unclench, watch a hand steady. She wrote notes with a blunt pencil that left gray streaks on her fingers. Walt ran scenarios with the grin of a man who likes seeing people sweat for the right reason. Josh and Chloe stopped cracking jokes and started calling for things before they were asked. In a small conference room, the walls had been pushed back to make space for whiteboards. Someone had sketched a map of the city with pins at the training grounds and the roads that took the longest to clear. A courier from the Pentagon signed a log, set a flat brown envelope on the table, and left without staying long enough to look around. Rowan broke the seal with a butter knife from the staff kitchen. The paper inside was heavy, the kind that did not bend without telling you it was bending. Redactions sat like black river stones across sentences. There was enough left to make the shape. Maya took the chair across from her and said nothing. She watched Rowan read. She watched Rowan stop reading and stare at a single paragraph. She watched her start again from the top as if the first pass had not been real. They disobeyed orders, Rowan said, voice low and steady. Not to fight. To carry kids out. They were already dying when they reached me. Maya reached across and set her fingers on the edge of the page, not in the way of the words. You did what you had to with what you had, she said. Rowan nodded almost imperceptibly. She did not wipe her eyes. She let the tears go where they would and did not touch her face. They wanted to pin a medal on me, she said. And you told them no. It did not change what was in the room, Rowan said. Maya slid a box of tissues across the table. Neither of them opened it. The sunlight moved a hand's breadth along the wall and stopped. In the ICU, a nurse was peeling off a layer of tape from a chest dressing. Ortiz sat propped up, wincing when he laughed, because laughing pulled at the sutures no one could see. His hair had grown in uneven. He had not shaved for a week. He looked happy about things that had nothing to do with razors. Colonel, he said when he saw Rowan. His voice was husky and alive. Captain Rowan said, Did I say anything stupid? He asked. I do not remember much from that day. You complained about the light Dr. Gutierrez said from the opposite side of the bed. You tried to tell it where to go. Sounds right, Ortiz said. He shifted and grimaced and smiled through the grimace. My wife Lila wanted me to ask you something. She thought I would make it weird, so I am asking, while it is still my idea. The baby is due in a couple of months. We want you to be her godmother. Rowan felt the room tilt the way a room tilts when an elevator starts to move. She reached for the rail at the foot of the bed without making a show of it. You sure you want a surgeon who cuts chests open at parties? She said. We will avoid balloon animals, Ortiz said. His eyes were bright and tired. You gave me time. I want you there when we use it. Rowan nodded. I would be honored. He closed his eyes and let a breath roll through him that did not hurt as much as it had the day before. By late afternoon, the unit was calm in the way a quiet day can be calm. Soft footfalls muted, talked the clink of a metal tray. That lasted as long as a held note. Sirens rose outside and grew until the glass vibrated. Overhead speakers clicked and a voice that did not waste words filled the halls. Mass casualty alert. Explosion at the embassy on Lexington. Multiple critical inbound. All trauma staff to bays. People stood and moved. The building held its breath once and then exhaled into action. Walt rolled crash carts out of the line and placed them where they would be reached with one step and not two. Patel adjusted her mask and met Rowan at the board. Klein arrived with his coat unbuttoned and his hair not perfect. 3 critical, several stable, he said. Hale Bay 1, Patel 2, Kim 3, Grant float. Gutierrez lead airway. The doors opened and heat came in with the first gurney. The patient on it was barely conscious, early 30s shrapnel in the chest and belly skin gray at the edges. The medic rattled off numbers while the wheels hit the threshold. Male unknown penetrating injuries to chest and abdomen, hypotensive tachycardic altered. Rowan cut clothing off in long, straight lines. Blood slicked under her hands. She pressed saw, the reaccumulation felt the belly under her palm rigid and wrong. Breath sounds were present on both sides, but quiet on the left. Neck veins were flat. The pressure read 70/40. The heart rate tried to outrun itself. Type and cross 4, she said. Oh, negative now. Chest x-ray. Call for an OR. If the x-ray lies, I am still going. Across in Bay 2, Patel set a chest tube with clean force. Blood came and then air and then both. She watched the line and the numbers heard them climb a notch, gave orders one at a time. In Bay 3, Josh set an IV in a vein that liked to roll and did not roll this time. He met Chloe's eyes for a half second and grinned without teeth, then lost the grin and went back to work. Klein stepped into the slot near Rowan's right shoulder and did what he had not done in months. He asked, What do you need? Retractors vascular set ready, Rowan said. If he drops, we cut here and go. If he holds, we cut in the room, we can close him in. She looked at the x-ray and did not wait for someone else to read it. Free air, yes. A sliver of metal near the liver. The belly under her hand fought her hand now. The monitor complained at a higher pitch. Call it, Klein said. Emergency laparotomy, Rowan said. Here. The tray arrived. Walt broke the seals. The metal looked clean enough to eat off. The antiseptic burned in the nose and marked the moment. Rowan incised along the midline. The peritoneum opened. Blood lifted to greet her. She packed quadrants with towels in a rhythm that set the room. Right upper, left upper, pelvis, middle. Liver, she said. There was a cut like a grin across the edge of the right lobe. It wept and then sprayed under pressure. She held it with her fingers and then with a Pringle maneuver. The bleeding slowed, then respected her hand. Suction, she said. Irrigation. Pack tighter. She traced the path of metal with her eyes and then with a gloved fingertip. No bowel content where bowel content should not be. A small hole in the mesentery that did not leak. She placed stitches where stitches would make a difference and left alone what did not need her yet. Pressure is climbing, Dr. Gutierrez said. 90/50, heart rate down to 110. Good, Rowan said, and meant it like a fact, not a victory. In Bay 2, a chest rose easier under Patel's hands. Her patient blinked focused and tried to speak. She shook her head once and he stopped trying. In Bay 3, Josh finished tying a bandage and stepped back to let a tech slide the stretcher rail up. Chloe wrote on a skin surface with a marker because the chart was not going to be close enough. Rowan finished hemostasis on the liver and placed a temporary abdominal closure that would buy hours without stealing minutes. She secured the dressing and stood back enough to see the whole person and not just the hole. The blood on her gloves had started to dry at the fingertips, where the lights were hottest. Stable for transport, Dr. Gutierrez said. ICU ready. Or reserved if we need to return. Go, Rowan said. They moved again as one. The wheels took the weight. The lines did not catch. The doors opened and closed because hands were there before shoulders were. When the last gurney cleared the bay, the room felt too big for a blink. Someone laughed an exhausted sound. Someone else leaned on a wall and then peeled off it. Rowan took off her gloves and felt the tack of dried betadine on her wrist. She scrubbed her hands in a small sink until the smell softened. She pulled out her phone and saw a new message. A picture filled the screen. A newborn with a full head of black hair, a hospital cap pushed back, eyes closed, mouth open in a perfect O. A text under it. Sophia Grace Ortiz, 8 pounds 6 ounces. Lila says hi. Come meet her when the alarm stopped for a minute. Rowan rested the phone against the stainless steel for a second. She touched her sleeve down over the numbers on her arm and felt the fabric catch on a seam. She set the phone back in her pocket and listened to the monitors find their quiet song again. She counted 9 beats under her breath and stopped counting when the rhythm no longer needed her to hold it. The auditorium smelled faintly of dust and warm cables. Rows of white coats turned the place into a tide. A projector hummed. Light flickered over slides that showed red and green bars climbing higher than they had 6 months ago. HCTI printed in simple font on the bottom corner. Rowan stood at the podium without notes. The mic picked her breath and made it sound closer than it felt. Trauma does not wait for perfect rooms, she said. It happens where lights are bad and pumps fail. Protocols start the race, judgment wins it. She clicked. A video loaded without sound. In it, a sim base shook with noise. A pump alarmed. A chest rose wrong and then right. A resident adjusted a light and color changed from doubt to blood flow. The room watched and did not breathe. She spoke about seeing before naming, about learning the colors first, then the sounds, then the order. She did not sell it. She showed it hands open at her sides, soft voice that made people lean in. The numbers on the slides mattered and did not matter. What mattered ran under them like current. In the front row, Maya took notes with a pen that left a wet blue trail. Josh sat straight and did not bounce. Chloe kept her jaw shut and her eyes bright. Walt stood at the back near a door. He looked like a man who knew exits and was not planning to use one. Rowan finished and stepped back. The applause came up from the floor like pressure. It rolled and settled and rolled again. Klein walked to the stage steps and stood off to the side. He had not straightened his hair. He had not fixed his coat. He looked younger when he did not try to look perfect. When Rowan met his eye, he nodded once, a small nod that set something down between them. Hands went up. Rowan pointed to Josh. "How do you teach the part where the room is too loud?" he said. "When your chest is tight and you cannot find the thing you need because the tray is wrong." "You make it loud," Rowan said. "You fail on a day no one dies. You learn to breathe on purpose. You plant your feet and move one thing at a time." Chloe raised her hand. "What about afterwards?" she said, "when it follows you home?" "You do not carry it alone," Rowan said. "You talk before you break. You debrief like you scrub. Every time." No one earns points for silence. On the far side of the room, a uniform eased through the audience. Dress blues that did not glare under the lights. A man in his 60s with a clean jaw and careful eyes. He stood near a column and waited for the talk to end. When the last question folded, the crowd uncoiled and became conversations. The man in uniform came forward. Klein met him halfway and shook his hand. There was a quiet exchange, and then both turned to Rowan. "Colonel Hale," the man said. "James Cordell. Thank you for letting an old soldier sit in the back." General Rowan said. He held out an envelope, government stock paper heavy in the hand. A formal offer, he said. "DOD, FEMA, VA, National Integration Task Force. You lead." Rowan did not open it. She watched his face instead. "We should have put that report on your desk years ago," he said. "There is no good excuse for the time it took to take the black bars off. I am sorry." Rowan let that sit. She nodded once. "Headquarters here," she said. "We do not move the center to an office that does not touch patients." "Here," Klein said before the general could answer. "We build around her, not over her." Cordell smiled a tired smile that carried weight. "Here," he said. "You have what you need." Rowan slid the envelope under her arm. She shook his hand. His grip was warm and dry. He did not squeeze too hard. "Congratulations," Klein said. The words sounded like a statement rather than a toast. The general faded into knots of people. Pictures were taken. Someone tried to hand Rowan a bouquet, and she took it, and then set it on a chair because her hands liked to be empty. Afterward, Rowan and Maya walked the glass corridor that overlooked the emergency entrance. The sun had been knocked down to a softer color. An ambulance idled by the curb. A paramedic leaned on the hood and rubbed his eyes with the heel of his hand. Maya watched the way Rowan's shoulder lifted and fell under the fabric of her coat. "Do you ever add to it?" she said. Rowan looked at the inside of her wrist where the sleeve had crept back. The numbers sat where they always had, black and exact. "This place does not need coordinates," she said. "It needs hands in the right place." They stood there without speaking until the ambulance pulled away. The glass vibrated and then stilled. On the maternity floor, a room held quiet that felt like a held note. Ortiz sat in a chair that reclined too far back. He had a hospital bracelet he did not need anymore, and a smile he needed very much. Lila lay in the bed, hair pulled into a loose knot, eyes that said she had slept and not slept and was fine either way. A bassinet rolled between them. Sophia Lila said, "She is small and loud." Rowan washed her hands without being asked to and crossed the last distance on soft soles. The baby wore a cap with a pattern of gray stars. Her mouth made a small O and then closed and then opened again. Rowan put a finger on the tiny palm and felt the grip. Strong, greedy. Alive. "You brought her into a room with good light," Rowan said. "We tried," Layla said. "The rest is yours." Rowan looked at Ortiz. He looked back with eyes that had seen the ceiling of a trauma bay and were now seeing a roof painted in clouds that were better than real ones. "You were right about the light," he said. Rowan stood with them a while. She did not say blessings or luck. She let the room be the room. When she left, she touched the door with her fingers instead of her palm. It felt like a promise she did not have to speak. Evening settled over the hospital and made the glass warm on the inside. In the HCTI unit, the sim lab slept with its monitors dark. In the corridor, a cart stood against a wall with fresh drapes folded like blue water. Walt passed with a mop and a tune and nodded at Rowan like he always did. The elevator doors opened and closed with their own careful rhythm. Klein waited near the board with his hands in his pockets. He looked at the numbers for a long time without writing anything. When Rowan approached, he did not straighten. He looked at her with something like peace. "Headquarters here," he said again, as if trying the words on. "I will hold the door while you carry the heavy." "I am not carrying alone," Rowan said. He tilted his head. It felt enough like thanks that he did not have to say it. The speakers clicked. The hospital had a voice that knew how to cut a room without making it bleed. "Trauma alert," it said. 2 inbound from highway rollover, 1 critical, 10 minutes. The line of bodies that made a team formed without talk. Maya took a breath and lost the stiffness in her shoulders. Josh checked a drawer for something he knew would not be there and smiled when it was. Chloe tied her mask, looked at Rowan, and looked away to hide the smile she could not help. Rowan pulled her hair tighter and felt the cap settle. She rubbed her thumb against the seam of her glove until it sat where it needed to. She walked down the hall to the bay. The light turned the floor into a path. She did not think about anything beyond the next door. She stepped through the threshold and felt the temperature shift against her skin. Monitors woke. The room gathered itself. 9 minutes is not an ending, she thought. It is where the fight begins. She took her place at the table. The doors opened. The wheels came in hot. The work was there. The hands were ready. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.